Stop and think about your last name for a moment. You've signed it 1,000 times, spelled it over the phone, seen it printed on documents you barely remember. But when was the last time you actually thought about what it means? Your surname isn't just a word your parents passed down. It's a message in a bottle thrown across centuries by people you'll never meet. People who had no cameras, no social media, no way to tell you who they were except through one thing: their name. And they chose it carefully. Because in medieval Britain and Ireland, your surname wasn't random. It told the world exactly where you came from, what you did to survive, or which family bloodline kept you alive. It was identity, occupation, geography, and legacy compressed into a single word. Most names were born between the years 1000 and 1500. They survived plagues that killed half of Europe, wars that redrew borders, migrations that scattered families across oceans. And somehow, impossibly, they made it to you. Your last name is a fossil, a linguistic artifact, a 1,000-year-old answer to the question, who are you and where do you belong? Let's decode what yours is trying to tell you. England. When surnames became law. Before the year 1066, most English people had one name. Just one. Edward, Alice, Thomas. That was enough in a village of 50 people where everyone knew everyone else's family for 3 generations back. But then William of Normandy invaded England and changed everything. After conquering the kingdom, William needed control. He needed to know who owned what land, who owed taxes, and who could be called to fight. So in 1086, he commissioned a massive survey called the Domesday Book, a complete record of England's people and property. And for that to work, people needed names that wouldn't change. Fixed identifiers that could be tracked year after year, generation after generation. That's when English surnames stopped being nicknames and became permanent family names. They followed 4 clear patterns, and each one tells you something different about your ancestors' world. The worker's badge. In medieval England, what you did defined who you were. Your work wasn't just a job, it was your identity, your social position, your entire reason for being. So, naturally, most surnames came from occupations. A blacksmith who worked with metal became smith. Someone who ground grain became a miller. A person who made wheels became wheeler. Someone who brewed ale became a brewer. These weren't just common jobs, they were essential. Every village needed a smith. Every town needed a miller. These people kept society functioning, and their names reflected their importance. Some occupational names are hidden now. A Fletcher made arrows. A Thatcher built roofs from straw. A Fuller cleaned and thickened wool. A Chandler made candles. A Cooper built barrels. If your surname is one of these, your ancestor was a craftsperson whose skill was valuable enough to become their entire identity. The map written in names. Other English surnames came from geography, the physical landscape that shaped daily life. If your family lived on or near a hill, they became hill. Near a forest, wood or woods. By a brook, brook or brooks. In a field, field or fields. Sometimes the location was even more specific. A family living near a distinctive oak tree might become oak. Near a stone boundary marker, stone. By the town church. And when people moved away from their birthplace, their old home became their new surname. A man from the town of York became York. From Lancaster, Lancaster. From Ashton, Ashton. These weren't addresses, they were anchors. Your land was your lineage. The mirror names? Some surnames came from what you looked like or how you acted. Short, long, brown, white, black, young, strong, swift. These started as obvious observations. If you were noticeably tall, you might become long. If your hair was dark, brown or black. If you moved quickly, swift. What began as a simple description became a family name that outlived the person it originally described by 1,000 years. The father's shadow. Finally, many English surnames came from patronage your father's name. If your father was William, you became Williamson. Father is named John Johnson. Richard, Richardson. Robert, Robertson. The pattern never changed. Father's name plus son equals permanent family identity. These names were especially common in northern England, where family lineage mattered deeply in a world of clan-like loyalty and inherited land rights. English surnames are practical, organized, built for a society that valued order, clarity, and knowing exactly who everyone was and where they fit. Ireland, names that carry bloodlines. Ireland took a completely different path, and it started centuries earlier. While most of Europe was still using single names, Irish families were creating hereditary surnames as early as the 10th century. These are some of the oldest continuously used family names in the entire world. But the Irish didn't create surnames for taxes or land records. They created them to preserve something sacred: the bloodline, the O declaration. The most recognizable Irish surnames begin with O, which comes from the Old Irish word ua, meaning grandson of or descendant of. When an Irishman called himself O'Brien, he wasn't just saying his grandfather was named Brian. He was declaring loyalty to a lineage stretching back potentially hundreds of years to a king, warrior, or clan founder whose name still commanded respect. O'Sullivan, O'Connor, O'Neill, O'Reilly. These weren't just family names. They were tribal identities, declarations that you belong to a specific people with shared land, shared enemies, and shared memory. The Mac network. The other great Irish naming pattern uses Mac, meaning son of. McCarthy, son of Carthach. MacDonald, son of Donna. MacNamara, son of the Hound of the Sea. Like O names, Mac surnames weren't just about your father. They were about clan membership. Being a McCarthy meant you belonged to a web of people bound by blood and mutual protection. It meant you had a place in the world and people who would defend it. The Gaelic soul. Many Irish surnames come from ancient Gaelic words describing strength, character, or natural elements. Murphy comes from Murchad sea warrior. Gallagher means lover of foreigners or foreign helper. Doherty comes from a word meaning hurtful or obstructive, likely a warrior's name worn with pride. Even today, these names carry the sound and rhythm of the Irish language, vowels and consonants that don't exist in English, sounds that survived when the language itself was being erased. The scars of conquest. Because Irish names also carry wounds. When England colonized Ireland, beginning in earnest in the 1500s, they didn't just take land. They took names. Irish families were pressured or forced to anglicize. O prefixes were dropped. Mac became Mac or M, or vanished entirely. Gaelic spellings were replaced with English approximations. Some families resisted as long as they could. Others had no choice. This is why so many Irish surnames look English today. They were translated, disguised, or erased to survive in a system that criminalized Irish identity. But even when the spelling changed, the memory didn't. And O'Brien, forced to write his name as Brian, still knew who he was. The blood remembered. Irish surnames aren't just names. They're proof that identity can outlive conquest. Scotland, clans, Highlands, and loyalty unto death. Scotland's surname story is split between two worlds: the Gaelic-speaking Highlands and the English-influenced Lowlands. And that division created two very different naming traditions. The Highland clans. In the Scottish Highlands, surnames were clan names, and a clan was everything. Not just family, not just neighbors. A clan was identity, protection, land rights, and survival all rolled into one. To belong to a clan meant you were never truly alone. The most common way to mark that belonging was through Mac, son of. MacDonald, MacLeod, Mackenzie, McGregor, Campbell, Cameron. But these weren't patronymic names like Johnson or Richardson. They were clan identities. Being a MacDonald didn't just mean your father was named Donald. It meant you belonged to Clan Donald, one of the most powerful family networks in Highland history. Clan members fought together, protected each other's land, avenged wrongs done to the clan. Your surname wasn't just your name, it was your army. When the English crown finally crushed the Highland clans after the failed Jacobite uprisings in the 1700s, they knew exactly what they were doing when they banned tartans, bagpipes, and clan gatherings. They were trying to break the bonds that surnames represented. They failed. The names survived. The Lowland Lords. In the Scottish lowlands, closer to England, surnames developed differently. Here, names came from land ownership and noble titles. Stuart, Douglas, Hamilton, Murray, Fraser. These weren't clan names. They were territorial names, tied to estates and power. Stuart originally meant steward, someone who managed the king's lands. The family rose so high that they eventually became the Royal House of Stuart. Douglas comes from a place in Lanarkshire. Hamilton from an English village. These surnames carried weight not because of bloodline, but because of what they controlled. The nickname curse. Some Scottish surnames began as physical descriptions that were probably insults. Campbell comes from the Gaelic Cam Buell, crooked mouth. Cameron means crooked nose. Imagine being the first person called crooked mouth as a joke, only to have it become your family's permanent identity for the next 1,000 years. Scottish surnames are layered. They tell stories of fierce loyalty, brutal warfare, and the collision of cultures where borders meet. Wales, the name that wouldn't stay still. Wales did something almost no other culture did. For most of its history, Wales didn't use fixed surnames at all. Instead, the Welsh used a system where your name changed every single generation. It was called the patronymic system, and it worked like this. If a man named Rhys had a son named Dafydd, that son would be known as Dafydd ap Rhys, Dafydd, son of Rhys. If Dafydd then had a son named Morgan, that boy would be Morgan ap Dafydd, Morgan, son of Dafydd. The name resets with every generation. It was a living family tree, constantly updating in real time. Your name wasn't a fossil, it was a growing thing. When AP became permanent. But under English legal pressure to adopt fixed surnames, something interesting happened. The word ap started to blur together with the name that followed it. And as these combinations were spoken over and over, they fused into single words. Ap Rhys became Price. Ap Hywel became Powell. Ap Owen became Bowen. Ap Richard became Pritchard. Ap Harry became Perry. What had been full phrases collapsed into surnames that sounded distinctly Welsh, but functioned like English family names. The frozen moment. Eventually, when Wales was legally required to adopt permanent surnames, many families simply froze their current patronymic into a family name. If your father were Evan, you would become Evans. Father is named John Jones. David, Davies or Davis. William, Williams. Thomas, Thomas. This is why these names are overwhelmingly common in Wales today. They represent the exact moment when an entire culture's naming system was forced to stop moving and stand still forever. The language keeper. But Welsh surnames also became protectors of the Welsh language itself. Names like Llewellyn, Gwyneth, Rhys, Griffith, and Morgan preserve sounds that exist nowhere else in English. Letter combinations like L and D and Y carry the music of a language that was being suppressed everywhere else. Welsh names became the last refuge of a language and a culture under siege. How to read your own name. Even after 1,000 years of migration, war, and intermarriage, patterns remain. If you know what to look for, you can often trace a surname back to the culture that created it. Irish signatures. Look for O or Mac at the start. Even without those, Irish names often have that unmistakable Gaelic sound. Murphy, Ryan, Gallagher, Doherty, Quinn. English markers. Practical, grounded names. Often occupational: Smith, Baker, Turner, place-based Hill, Rivers, Field, or ending in Son, Johnson, Richardson, Harrison. Scottish signals. Mac names often point to Highland clans: MacDonald, MacLeod. Lowland names may sound territorial or noble: Douglas, Stewart, Murray, Fraser. Some carry Gaelic roots: Campbell, Cameron. Welsh indicators. Names ending in S are formed from first names Williams, Jones, Davies, Evans. Names from the app system: Powell, Pritchard, Bowen, Price, Perry. Distinctly. Welsh names with unique spellings: Llewellyn, Griffith, Gwyneth. Of course, names traveled, people moved, families blended, borders shifted, spellings changed to fit new languages. But surnames remain quiet guides, carrying faint echoes of the place where a family's story first began. Surnames have survived things that destroyed kingdoms. They crossed oceans in the pockets of people who owned nothing else. They were whispered in secret when saying them aloud meant death. They were passed down even as the languages they came from were dying. A surname is one of the most resilient things human beings have ever created. Because it's not just a word. Its memory refuses to die. Some names carry ancient clans. Some carry the pride of skilled work. Some mark the land. Others mark the bloodline. But every single one carries something that 1,000 years of chaos couldn't erase. That's the quiet, lasting power of a name. So, what's your last name? Drop it in the comments and tell me which culture you think it comes from: English, Irish, Scottish, or Welsh. Let's see if we can trace it back together. If this made you see your surname differently, hit subscribe, because your name is older than you think, and it's been waiting 1,000 years for you to finally listen to what it's been trying to say.